we are going to talk about the conjunction, the function of the conjunction. So what exactly is a conjunction? Well, the word conjunction means to join. So conjunction is something that joins together. So if we look down here, it joins together single nouns, verbs, and adjectives. And so what's interesting here is you can see that it's very much like the comma, what we did in the comma video, where we had a series of things. We have nouns, verbs, and adjectives. And that and was that conjunction we were talking about earlier. Now, if you're really sharp, you may notice at home that, oh, there's not a comma here. And this is interesting because in English, it's actually optional to put a comma there, but it's optional for sort of for the grown-ups, adults, newspapers, professional writers. They can usually forgo this. So if you don't put that second comma there, your teacher's going to probably say, hey, you got to put it there. But just thought I'd point that out. The key here, though, is you have a series of things, and we're listing. That's what we're doing. We're joining together this word, and this word. And so our conjunction needs to come here at the very end. And it doesn't have to necessarily be nouns. It can be verbs. It can be adjectives, as we'll see in a moment. Now, another important function here, and the one that I'm going to focus on more in this video, is that the conjunction joins together phrases and clauses, both dependent and independent. This one is huge. We're going to see that. Getting a sense of how the conjunction works, joining together dependent and independent clauses, and of course also putting the comma in there, if you came from the comma video, is going to make you a much better writer. You're going to shoot to the top of your class if you can learn to combine dependent and dependent clauses using the right conjunctions. Your teachers are going to go, wow, Tommy, you really are learning how to write. So we want to get you there. So let's take a look at these sentences. What's going on? Well, basic stuff. My friend, my dog, and I, same jazz we had in the comma video. Basically noun, noun, and noun. Remember I from the pronoun video. It's in the object or the subject case, so I is correct here. And of course the conjunction and is just as we had in the previous screen. Phrase-wise, so if we go to B, notice this phrase. He ran through the trees. So we have a verb, we'll pull square around that, followed by a prepositional phrase. Put PP, prepositional phrase. There's through the trees. Here's the comma. Notice he jumped over a river. Same thing. Verb, prepositional phrase, over a river, just like through the trees. And this idea of, hey, look, everything is matching up nicely. Verb followed by prepositional phrase is called parallelism. But unless you are a grown-up, or unless that is you are learning sophisticated grammar, do not go on to that video. But it is there, much further on in this grammar curriculum. But back to this question, we have the comma A, meaning this verb and prepositional phrase, comma B, this verb and this prepositional phrase over river, and comma, you need the word then and, which is our conjunction. Joining together the third prepositional phrase, there's our verb climbed, sorry, our third phrase, because the phrase is made up of the verb climbed and the prepositional phrase up the mountain. So again, conjunctions links together phrases. In fact, you could just say he ran through the trees and jumped over a river, but then we wouldn't have a comma. And if you're unsure about that, go back to the comma video. But anyway, here we have a conjunction and. And I think at this point, people get that. If you're watching these videos, you say, okay, Chris, I get that. Give me something more. Are there other conjunctions? And to that person, I say, oh yeah, there are, definitely. More conjunctions. Check it out. He had never gone hiking before. Now we have the conjunction but. But is a conjunction. We'll circle around it. But is a conjunction that shows contrast. Now, I want to focus on the first part of the sentence. He had never gone hiking before. If I put a period there, that's absolutely fine. That's a sentence. Why? Subject, had never gone hiking. That's a really long verb. We'll get to long verb phrases like this later, but that's our verb. And it's followed by an adverb here at the end, but that's all we need, subject and verb. So that's a sentence. Let's do the same over here. After the word but, let's look here where it says decided to do so in Yosemite. Is that a sentence? Decided to do so in Yosemite? We maybe have decided to do. That's our verb, but where's our subject? If we just take this part, there is none. So you can see that we are combining an independent clause with a dependent clause here. Now, usually when you have two independent clauses, you would have a comma here, but we don't. But for this video, we're focused, of course, more on the conjunction. And the conjunction but is one of contrast. So the idea is, well, he'd never gone hiking before. Man, that's crazy. He hasn't even gone like on an hour little hike up the hill, and now all of a sudden he wants to go to Yosemite, where there's that massive mountain half over, almost or over 9,000 feet high. And so there's a contrast. Even though someone's never gone hiking before, he's going to go to Yosemite. So that word but shows us that contrast. Now let's move on to D. To challenge myself, I could either climb Mount Whitney or run a marathon. Sometimes conjunctions can just combine two things, as we saw with and. And here it's Mount Whitney or a marathon. And that's the key. That's the conjunction. It's not and or shows one of two possibilities. This person is not going to climb up a 14,500 foot mountain, which is Mount Whitney, and then run a marathon. I'm sure, well, actually, I'm not sure if anyone can do that, but here he wants to do either one of two things, and that's why we have the conjunction or. Okay, so finally, and hopefully you're getting all this, because finally on this next slide, we're going to have a very scary sentence. But if some of this, if you're not sure and you say, wow, I think I need to understand this whole dependent clause thing, please go back to dependent clauses. But if you're ready, if you've got it, look at E. Whoa, very big. Let's take it apart. Exercising every morning, comma, eating healthily. You can see now we have these phrases. And learning to breathe. There's our conjunction connecting these phrases. Again, these phrases are just fragments. They're not sentences. They're not independent clauses, dependent clauses, because dependent clauses need what? They need subject. They need verbs. These are just exercising every morning. There's no subject there. But they're phrases joined with the word and. I guess the end, the comma here. And then we need the comma because now we're going to have a sentence. We're going to have an independent clause. Because we don't have a sentence yet. These are just a series of fragments joined with the conjunction and. Michael had fully prepared himself for the hike. Had that been everything, that would be a sentence because we have Michael, the subject, had fully prepared the verb. But just because we have our independent clause, remember it can stand alone, it's a sentence, same thing, independent clause. We'll put IC there for independent clause. Even though we have one, we can have something more, and indeed we do. Yet he was still unable to reach the top of the mountain. Is that a dependent clause or an independent clause? Well, he was still unable to reach the top of the mountain. If I just took this off here, that would be great because now I have an independent clause. But what else is going on here? We have this conjunction. So you can see that this independent clause can stand on its own, but we are using the word yet, which is a conjunction. And it shows, again, a contrast. Even though he was ready, he was still unable to reach the top of the mountain. And so we are now in this massive sentence. We have combined two independent clauses with a conjunction. When you combine two independent clauses, you will always need a conjunction. You, most of the times, and I think it's a little good rule of thumb, will need a comma. So think of two independent clauses together to be comma, conjunction. If this conjunction was not here, we just had a comma, and then we went on, he was still unable to reach the mountain. That is called a comma splice. I know there's a lot in this video. That's an extra thing, but you can go on to the comma splice video to see exactly what a comma splice is and have other examples. But for now, we've taken apart this massive sentence. We can see that it actually has a couple of conjunctions, one with and. Notice the comma usage as well. And notice how we have a conjunction connecting two independent clauses.